do whatever the Hyundai you want.
Hey, I'm Ricky Stenhouse Jr.
G'day, I'm Marcus Ambrose.
Hey, this is Kenny Rowe, and you're listening to
The Fuel Pod.
This podcast covers all things motorsports. It's unfiltered, it's unmasked, and
Ooh, we're going crazy. All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 77 of the Fuel Pod. Happy Thanksgiving. We obviously took the Thanksgiving day off, and for a few different reasons. One, we wanted to spend time with our families, and two, give you the chance to do that and not have to worry about looking at our ugly mugs talking about racing. So thank you very much, and I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving and with your families or whoever you choose to spend Thanksgiving with. And whatever you decided to have for a meal. I'm not a turkey guy. I realize 99% of the world is a turkey guy, but I am not one of those.
I get the veggie plate. I'm not a turkey guy either.
Plate. I'm definitely not that guy. I like veggies, but there's got to be others.
You can't go wrong with some green bean casserole.
Yeah, you can on so many levels.
My goodness.
Green beans should only be eaten as directed.
Oh my goodness.
With salt and pepper. But anywho. So we had a lot that happened this past week, though. I mean, really only one race, but a lot to talk about it. And I'm going to have egg on my face a little bit, which I'm glad to admit. Mikey does too. He might not admit it, but
a little bit, yeah.
We talked some serious shit about this Las Vegas race. And they let us know that not only were we wrong, we were way wrong. But we'll get to that in a minute, too. We're also going to talk about Abu Dhabi is coming up this weekend. It's the last race of the 2023 campaign for Formula One. So we'll talk about some of the news and events and rumors and gossip that go along with that. We've got some driver information that we're going to be sharing on a couple of drivers. And then also we got to talk about Rally Japan, because as good and zany as Vegas was, Rally Japan was nasty.
Yeah.
I mean, it was nasty, and we'll talk about that as well. But let's go ahead and kick it off with some Vegas info. Again, never been happier to be wrong. I think I have a different opinion on it than you, Mikey. But man, by all means, go ahead with yours.
Okay, so initially, I didn't like it. I said it was more of an exhibition with all the craziness that went along with it.
Right.
And I was discussing this with Cody, and he put his money points in, and I still wasn't sure. I was like, nah, I could do without that. But I rewatched the race today, and that was a pretty good race.
Yeah, it was an excellent race. Now, Cody, is that your new fan?
Yeah.
That you brought on board? Okay. And I mean, yeah, that was a really good race for him to watch.
Yeah,
there's really been a lot that weren't, and would be very difficult to explain your passion for this sport if you had to watch some of the other races from this season. And it's especially hard to get Americans into the mindset that it's not about who wins, that there are winners all the way through the grid, at least down to P10. Yeah. So it's hard to rewire our brains to where some of these guys aren't even going out there to win. They're going out there to win their fight. Like, everybody has their own fight.
Yeah.
Every driver has their own fight in an F1 race, and it's not always P1. So it's hard to rewire our brains to think like that, but Formula One kind of has to.
Mm-hmm.
So, we get to the beginning of the race, and turn one lived up to our billing of being a shit show. But here's the thing. It didn't have to be. This wasn't the track that caused it. It wasn't F1 to cause it. It was Max Verstappen driving his douche canoe through turn one and deciding to drive I've seen people edge people off the track and stay on the track themselves. He literally drove him all the way off the track. And then he just drove back on the track and leaving Leclerc to go all the way around the outside and to get back on there. And I mean, it looked awful. It didn't even look close, man. I mean, it looked like a little kid that was pissed that he might lose, is what it looked like. Right. So I was really upset. I was also really upset that it took, 15 or 16 laps to decide what to do with that situation after he had already built up a 2.53 second lead and then give him a 5-second penalty. And I'm going to quote Hinchcliffe. I'm going to paraphrase Hinchcliffe and Jakes, who were calling the race, and say that, I think we've reached a time where these guys shouldn't be given time penalties for these. Now, they didn't present a solution to that, but they, giving Max Verstappen a 5-second time penalty, that's only going to ensure that he's going to win 25 seconds. So I was pissed. I was really pissed when I was watching the race. But we had other things go on in turn one. You had Alonso spin out. You had Sainz going wheel to wheel with Hamilton. You had Bottas, who ran into the back of Alonso, and then Alonso got spun around and then decided to run into him nose to nose again, just to go, That's what you get, man. Thanks a lot for that.
By a calendar.
Yeah. So it was, here's my, just they were close enough to where he could have just thrown him a calendar at that point. Here's the bot ass calendar from 2024. So really, really crazy opening lap. But after that, it kind of calmed down somewhat. We had the Lando Norris doing his human javelin / SpaceX rocket demonstration where he shot himself into the wall. But other than that, man, some phenomenal lane change or lead changes. There was lots of great overtaking, and that 1.9 kilometer straight stretch there towards the end of the lap turned into a DRS. I don't even know what to call it. It was a if you were on the receiving end of it, it was not good. Because when you got 1.9 kilometers to close that second, man, it's not hard to do. And we saw ample evidence of that. Then you had people like Ocon, who didn't even make it out of Q3. Started the field, I think, P16, P14, and popped all the way up the field to P4 at one point.
Mm-hmm.
So really, really good job for guys like him. What were some of your takeaways?
I said I was so mad after the turn one, and it took me a while to get over that. But then we got into some really good racing. Max had a run in with George Russell later on, I think on lap 25 or something. Same, I don't know. He's becoming a bully and getting away with it.
Yeah.
And that was great, but the finish, you could not. The finish of the last turn with Leclerc, you have to describe that, because that was magic. That was a suicide.
Okay, so we have to go back before we can describe that. So we have lap 16. Charles Leclerc overtakes Max Verstappen, legitimately overtakes him for the lead of the race. Now we're going to move forward a little bit. So you had Leclerc up front. Well, then Perez passes Leclerc. And then Verstappen passes Leclerc, and then Verstappen passes Perez, and now he's in the lead. And then Max builds out like a 1.5 to 2 second lead. And you've got Charles Leclerc back there and Perez just turn for turn, not switching positions, but turn for turn, getting so close. Mm-hmm. And Leclerc passed him again. And then Perez passed him again, I want to say with like 10 or 12 to go. And we all felt like it was over. Plus, you had that situation where Leclerc locked his tires up because he tried to go full send on I think it was turn 12 or 14. And he basically had to come to a stop and let Perez around him and then rejoin the racing track.
Yeah.
On the last turn, Well, they said on the broadcast, they said last turn, but it wasn't. So on the next to last turn of the very last lap, Leclerc pulls out, and I don't think Perez, I think it caught Perez off guard because Leclerc's not always the most aggressive guy. I mean, he pulled off a Danny Ricciardo style overtake. He went hard, hit the brakes late, slid right by him on the inside, nosed him off coming out of that turn, and held on to it till they came around that final turn for the win to the start finish. It was, man, I was on my feet. I mean, we were yelling at farmers. It was cool to see because nobody thought it was going to happen. I don't think.
Oh my goodness! How about the cojones on the guy?
Yeah, no
He's
joke,
going
right?
220 miles an hour.
Yeah,
If that doesn't hold on, he's
Yeah.
joining Lando over in the corner.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm pretty sure it was the same turn,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, it was. Yeah, that track definitely presented some challenges for the drivers. Well, they had never driven it besides their practice runs, which were abbreviated at best. And they'd never driven it under race conditions, so that obviously made it a little more difficult. But yeah, I think it looked like, and I know there were a lot of memes on TikTok and Instagram reels this week, but of the drivers like pre-Vegas, their opinions pre-Vegas were, they were shit. I mean, it's terrible. And then after Vegas, everybody's happy. So they obviously liked the circuit, and it looked like they liked being there in town. Carlos Sainz probably didn't have as great a time. Lando Norris probably didn't have as great a time, but I think they both know they could, right? So
Everybody but Max. Max was miserable all week.
yeah, until he won, and then you caught Max singing in the car. I thought, who's that guy?
Yeah.
So, but I think we're going to have many more Las Vegas GP to come, man. I don't think this was a 1 or 2 or even 3 off race. I think this will be a long-term situation because you have David Coulthard, who's won, I don't know how many GPs he's won, probably 19 or so. He's won a lot. Talking about this was the best race all season. Buxton talking about it was the best race all season. It was the best race I've seen in a few years, honestly. But
wow.
So I look forward to seeing what they can do next year to improve upon it and seeing where we can go from there.
We talked earlier about the timing of it and how they kind of missed some opportunities having it so late.
Yeah, and that was probably the biggest downside of the whole thing was, for us it was midnight watching the race. For the East Coast, it was 1:00 in the morning. So I mean that had to be rough. I mean, as an American, we deal with a lot of super early mornings to watch F1 races, but we're kind of used to it at this point, and they're not super early. It's just, times you really don't want to get up on the weekend. But I do think they could have started right when the sun went down and achieved the same effect. The impact to the city was going to be negligible as far as more impact or less impact, and we'll talk about that in a little bit when we get to a different topic. But with everything, all the controversy and just trash talk you heard on the week leading up to the race, I think at that point you could have went with a 7:00 start time, which would have been 9 for us and 10 for the East Coast on a Saturday night. That's not too much to ask for Americans they're already going to be up anyway. They're going to be at their local clubs and bars or wherever they're going to be. Even if they're at home, they can watch it. So, I think next year maybe go a little earlier. I hope they do. Okay, so we have, you talk about a crazy turnaround and jet lag. We have Abu Dhabi this weekend. I figured they'd do a 2-week break, do a week break.
Danny Ricciardo, when he heard the news, he's like, what? Really? No, I'm against that.
I'm sure Danny doesn't know when any of the race weekends are. He probably has to be told, hey, man, need you in Japan by Thursday. He's probably that guy on the circuit that you're like, he's like, wait, we got a race this weekend? No shit. Who knew? So Abu Dhabi's coming up this weekend. Great track, great atmosphere, obviously. Last race of the season. everybody laying it on the line or not laying it on the line, as it were. But let's go through some of the top news from Abu Dhabi. Huge fight for constructors. We'll start with the first one, which is Ferrari Mercedes, which is the fight for P2 in the constructors. There's only 4 points separating those two teams.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I watched the weekend warm up, and I think Jolyon Palmer said it best that whichever team finishes with 2 cars will probably win P2.
Yeah.
Because in the past, like 4 races, there's either been 1 Ferrari or 1 Mercedes or both out of the race.
Mm-hmm.
So if whichever team can finish with both cars in the points, I think will come out P2 in this race. It's already not looking good for Sainz because his team's up tonight pulling burning the midnight oil. Of course, that was probably a bunch of hours ago, but burning the midnight oil to repair that car that he tore up today in free practice too. But anyway, that was the first fight. The second fight, which is the one you're more interested in, which is Aston Martin and McLaren. Now, there's an 11-point spread on this one. So let's be realistic here. If Ferrari's reliability is there and they hold it up, they're going to be in that second to probably 6th place slots somewhere, both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Mercedes is looking good today. They had pretty decent times.
Yeah.
Lando looked good today. So Lando could be in that mix, and so could Piastri, looking at how aggressive he was at Vegas. Alonso loves this track, and I think if they can hold it together, they could be in it. So this is going to be nasty, man.
Stroll's been on a roll.
And Stroll's been on a roll with a P5, last week at Vegas.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think they're coming. I don't think Aston Martin's going to lay down on your McLaren team.
They are either.
I mean, and I don't think they're going to go full Cobra Kai and sweep the leg on one of the Aston Martins to make it happen. But I mean, weirder things have happened in Formula One. So I don't know, man. When we get the predictions, we're also going to have to not just do the podium predictions, but do our who's winning these fights that we've got going on. The last one is AlphaTauri and Williams. And some people that do watch Formula One, all 17 of you in this country, there's a fight for 7th in the constructors. And if you're new to the show and you're new to Formula One, and you might be thinking, who the shit who cares about 7th place? Well, their money is based on their place, and it is severely decreased per position. The difference between P1 Red Bull and P10 probably Haas or Alfa Romeo could be $30 million, and that's a lot. Oh goodness, sorry.
It also affects their wind tunnel time and stuff too, doesn't it?
It affects a lot of things. Of course, when you're talking about Haas, I don't even know if they have one. So, and that's mainly because you can't come in at the bottom of constructors every year and pay everybody and build your car and buy a wind tunnel. So this is my point. P7 is huge. So the difference between P7 and 10 could be $10 million.
Yeah.
And that's a lot, when you're trying to pay people and get all the
equipment. That's a wind tunnel unit.
Yeah. And that's a wind tunnel unit. So there's only a 7-point spread between those two. And Williams looks tough. And so does AlphaTauri. Totally rejuvenated. Yuki's got a teammate that came to play. He looked good today, by the way, in practice, Ricardo. But, you got Albon, who is, we've said it a million times, and so does the F1 crew. He's in a rocket ship. If he can, their thing is going to be, can he hold it together? And Logan Sargent, as much as I hate to say it, is doing better. He seems more confident. But when you're doing better is 16th place, and that looks like better. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. But, yeah. So
he's finishing races now.
There's going to be pieces of Abu Dhabi that are going to be extremely beneficial to Williams. Not many, but the 3 that there are, and we're talking super flat out runs. um, are going to be very beneficial to those cats. But AlphaTauri is built a lot alike, so they're also pretty good in the flat outs and not so great at the low speed corners. But there's some medium to high speed corners too. So we'll see what happens. But that's that fight. Then there's the fight that nobody and I made sure to go back and watch. Like the Sky Sports preview and the weekend warm up fight. Nobody's really talking about, which is P4 to P7 in the Drivers' Championship. Now, if there's one that doesn't matter, this one doesn't matter. There's no money assigned to this. This is straight up pride. Max Verstappen's already won the Drivers' Championship, but P4 to P7 is only separated by 12 points. So it's anybody's ball game this weekend.
Yeah.
P4 and 5 are tied. Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso both have 200 points. Right behind them, and I think it's 196, 195. Lando Norris has 195. That's 5 points. And then Leclerc has 188. So that's 7 away from Norris. Any one of those guys could end up in P4 after this Abu Dhabi race. So it's really, honest to God, if all 4 of them are in the points, it really comes down to just whichever ones are ahead. So it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out at the end. There's no way for Sainz and Alonso to be tied after this race. So there is that.
Mm-hmm.
But Leclerc could get what? 5th place and win it, or be P4 after this one. So it should be interesting. I don't know what your thoughts are. I know who you want to be P4.
Yeah. I was
got a love Ferrari
earlier.
So glad I converted you to a Leclerc fan over the weekend. So a couple other things, housekeeping in Formula One for the last part of the season. We are saying goodbye to Alfa Romeo. And if you are a longtime Formula One fan, this is going to mean more to you than some of the newer fans, because Alfa Romeo has been around since the beginning. They're one of the few teams that have. Widely considered one of the greatest of all time is Fangio, who was a guy that took multiple championships and drove for Alfa Romeo. Hell, at one point Enzo Ferrari drove for Alfa Romeo. So, they're leaving Formula One, and they sent their goodbye message out this week. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But you're talking about a team that's been around since Formula One's inception, even before what we know is Formula One. So before 1950. And that's a tough beat, man. It's, seeing a works team go like that. So, their relationship with Sauber is ending, and I think we're going to be getting a new team in that slot. I don't know who it's going to be yet. I've heard Audi, so we'll see what happens. I don't know what your thoughts are on it being a newer Formula One fan, but yeah,
that's
definitely the pretty cars are going to be gone.
Well, that's a disappointment for this weekend. They've always been and they've always had good liveries for their one-offs, and I expected something with all the news and build-up of their final race during the week, and they showed up with the deck of cards still on the car.
Yeah, they're going to have one, though. I heard they're running one, a special.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so it should be pretty interesting from there.
I just saw the nose in the FP1 today, and it was still the deck of cards.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's goodbye. The other big goodbye is with AlphaTauri. Franz Toast is out, or French Toast, as some people like to call him, but he's also not French. But he's out as the team principal for AlphaTauri, and coming into his place is Laurent Mekies from Ferrari, the asleep at the wheel guy. He's coming in to take over AlphaTauri. But when they asked Franz what he's going to be doing after he leaves AlphaTauri, he literally said, "I'm going to be busier now than I was as team principal at AlphaTauri." Also, they promised to send him the telemetry and data for each race so he can watch from home and follow the telemetry and the data. I would, if I was at AlphaTauri, I would be like, absolutely not. I can't have you calling our new team principal on the wall and going, dude, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Do this. Right. So I would not be sending. I'd be like, yeah, we'll send you the data. Do not send him the data.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, but you know, my hat's off to him. He took a team that was hard to run, and he also took a team that was constantly getting poached for its talent to send it up to the, you know, the main team at Red Bull. So his whole job was building new drivers, really. So my hat's off to him. Wonderful career. Good luck to you in whatever you do, Franz, and enjoy your time off. But it doesn't sound like you're going to. The last one I want to cover, and this is under the gossip and rumors. So we had a nasty rumor that Christian Horner called or texted Lewis Hamilton about a seat at Red Bull. That's how it started. Then there was crickets for most of the week, and then they cornered Lewis Hamilton. Will Buxton cornered Lewis Hamilton and asked him point blank yesterday or 2 days ago. He goes, listen, I haven't talked to Christian Horner in years. And the way he said it made it sound like I'm not talking to Christian Horner. I don't like the man, kind of thing. That's the way it sounded. And he's like, you know, I have spoken with him and said, hey, you know, congratulations on a wonderful season, but nothing has been talked about as far as a seat at Red Bull. He did text me, and then it pretty much ended right there.
Yeah.
And he just went, you know, kind of flat cold right there. And then it left the F1 TV crew in this, like, it was such a long conversation that their producer actually said, you guys need to move along, because everybody was playing armchair quarterback, and they were talking about how cool would an F1 season be for the fans if Lewis and Max were on the same team, because they already can't stand each other.
Yeah.
So now you got two guys who are uber talented in the same technology, in the same car. Yeah, man, that would make for some super exciting racing.
Oh, it was funny how it all escalated through in the last couple of days.
Man, people just
Toto Wolff's involved. He's
Yeah.
bad mouthing Christian Horner. Christian Horner's sitting back like, I have the text. You know?
Yeah. Well, here's my thing too.
Hamilton's dad's involved now.
I wouldn't put it past Christian to call Toto and go, hey, man, let's start some shit and just see how far it goes.
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, I know they try to play them up as hating each other, but they both have severe respect for each other, man.
Yeah.
And it would absolutely not put, and that would be someone I would do. Like, if it were you and me running two different teams, I'd call you and go, hey, man, let's start some shit that one of your drivers is coming to my team, and let's just see how far it goes. And let's see how long the news cycle is. I'll put $50 on 10 days, you know, and just for a gentlemanly bet. That would be fun.
I'm starting to think you're on something there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they do it just to increase the clicks and the views and the hype. But yeah, I would absolutely do it. And I can definitely see
It'd be a big
the
episode for
personalities.
DTS.
Yeah, I can definitely see the
season finale for DTS.
Yeah. Toto and Christian would definitely do something like that. But yeah, that was some interesting news for that. But man, let's move on. Let's get in the dirt and get sideways and run into some ditches and hit some trees and some guardrails and drive through every possible type of weather and talk about World Rally Japan. And we've got 2 words for Rally Japan, and those are biblical weather. They experienced every season and every type of weather in 4 days. In Japan, there was clear skies. There was rainy, thunderstormy skies. There was hail. And yes, folks, there was snow. No other racing series can say that. Most racing series
and
can't
there was
even...
indoors.
Huh?
And there was indoors.
Yes, and there was an indoor super special stage. No other racing series can say they've seen that. Most racing series can't even say they've raced in anything other than good weather. So there's that. But we had an interesting race. My boy Elvin Evans came in P1, took that rally, which was no small feat. So I'm calling it straight up legit. Seb Ogier came in P2 and Cali Rovanpera in P3 for the Toyota trifecta. So Toyota ran the table on the podium. Big shocker there. Your boy, Esapekalapi, could not make the podium, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on which person's fans you are. Anyway, he came in P4. Takamoto Katsuda in P5 and Oitanik in 6. Terry Newville, who started out the rally pretty good, had a spin out on day 2 and put it in a ditch 6 seconds after he started the stage. So he literally left start finish, went around to the right, and then slid off the road into the ditch. I mean, he didn't even, it might have been shorter than 6 seconds. But
what's funny,
let's
he's
just
the third car that was in that ditch.
Yeah. So over the course of the weekend, let's just run the stats here. Takamoto Katsuda hit that ditch and caused a radiator problem, although he was able to turn his weekend around. Daniel Sordo was in that ditch. Did not help his weekend at all. Adrian Formeau was in that ditch. Ended his weekend. I'm pretty sure Munster Gehring or whatever his name is he was in that ditch. Terry Newville was in that ditch. Seb Ogier was in that ditch, although Ogier was able to turn his weekend around. The top 6 finishers in this rally were Rally 1 superstars that I just went through. But 7, 8, 9 places, P7, P8, P9, were Rally 2 Skoda cars.
Oh, wow.
We couldn't even get Rally 1 cars in the top 10. 7, 8, and 9 were Rally 2. And wait for it, P10 was an effing Rally 4 car.
I did not.
It was a Peugeot Rally 4 car. So they couldn't even get 10 Rally 1 cars in the top 10. So if you don't watch Rally, you have to know, by the way, folks, that everybody runs at the same time. So it's not one day all the Rally 1 cars go, and then the next day they have the NASCAR's version or Rally's version of NASCAR's Xfinity guys in there. They're all running, at the same time. So you've got the junior division Rally 2 cars that came in 7, 8, and 9, and then the junior coming in P10. So that I'll tell you right there that the rally was crazy. At one point, the defroster on Oitanik's Ford Puma went out. The window was completely plus he had a bad, just shit luck. The rain stopped and then it got humid and his over across the pond, they call it a windscreen, but over here the windshield got fogged up. And he looked like my dad when we'd go on vacation and it'd be pouring rain in the mountains. He was all leaned up on the steering wheel and he was like, 5 inches from the steering wheel. It took 3 minutes off of his rally stage. So he looked, like I said, he looked like a grandpa trying to drive out there, and it looked awful, like he was going 10 miles an hour or something. But anyway, season's over. Looking forward to, obviously, to next season. I will say this, man, the most improved driver to me is your boy, Esapekalapi, because he was he wasn't even a permanent seat last year.
Yeah.
So he was just kind of a bring him in case Seb Ogier's out last year. And then this year, he got that permanent seat. And unfortunately, we lost Craig Breen this year, which did a lot of driver shuffling. And that, it's unfortunate because, man, he was such a good driver. But Esapekalapi is now, he's a showcase driver, man. So I look forward to seeing more from him next year. And I really hope Evans can break through the Cali Rovanpera mess.
Yeah.
And get up there myself. But anyway, it was an incredible rally. Really enjoyed it. The tunnel stage was wonderful, seeing those guys go through there. And
oh, yeah, it was insane.
Yeah, nobody blew up this year.
There's
the
no
hail
room.
They were scared to death when the hail started coming in. Nobody knew what was going on. And you had like golf ball size rocks hitting their cars.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was a really fun race to watch. But that's all I got about that, man. So it is time for our podiums and back markers. So you're going to have to, let me get some music going. Got to get it down the volume here. There we go.
Got you. You got me going first, don't you?
I do.
All right. P3 on my podium.
Hold on.
We're going to stay. Oh, what? Now you ready?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. P3 on my podium. We're staying in Raleigh. Got to give it, all the pressure was on them to win in their home. And Toyota Gazoo 1-2-3. That is an amazing feat. That's Pekalapi. He got in the way of Taka getting fourth, but still a great job. Taka did win the Wolf Power Stage. Great job, great team. My number 2 is Single and Out, Elfin Evans. Terry Newell put the pressure on in this special stage indoors. Started off the next morning good. And then it became the Elfin Evans show all weekend, man. Great rally for him. And the top spot on my podium goes to Charles Leclerc. And that
You son of a bitch.
second to the last turn path. The suicide dive bomb into that. Just pray to God that those tires hold on, because it hit or miss.
Okay, well,
yeah.
let me also share Mike's podium. Can you see through it? Do you have like a drone in here somewhere?
No.
Okay, so the only one that was different was my third place on the podium, which goes to Fred Vasseur at Ferrari as a team principal, because as we go into this last race of the season, Fred, buddy, you took the hardest job in Formula One, team principal at Scuderia Ferrari. That is the hardest job in Formula One. It's the hardest one to keep. It looked wonky there at the beginning. It looked a little bit wonky in the middle. I think you've got your team kind of locked in, which is the same thing you did at Alfa Romeo. Now you just have better equipment. And I think you've done a good job. Now it really, hate to say it, but now it finally just comes down to your drivers. You didn't screw up the strategy at Vegas. In fact, you haven't screwed up pit strategy in quite a while. Because I would, my unstable mangina would have went nuts, and I would have ran out of ibuprofen a couple weeks ago. But number 2, Elfin Evans, the Welsh Dragon. Man, great job at Japan when everybody else looked like shit. You look like a rock star this weekend. So my hat's off to you, sir. And may you win the championship next year and beat that roving parrot kid. And number 1 for me, obviously, because it deserves to be, is Charles Leclerc for coming in, because I don't get to say that very often, for the last ditch, second to last turn, late braking Ricardo overtake maneuver that you did on Checo and caught him sleeping. Great job. Well-deserved podium. Thank God you didn't wear an Elvis impersonator suit like Max and Checo did. Thank you for just staying in your regular Ferrari jumpsuit. So that's the podium. Let's move on. Let's turn this music off, because these next guys don't deserve it. And let's talk about our back markers. I use losers, and I know that's an insensitive term, but in fact, that's indeed what these folks are. So let's move on to our back markers. Go for it.
All right. So at number 3, I've got the FIA.
Don't they make your back mark? Don't you just leave it on there?
See, we did this for Stroll too.
Okay.
Remember?
Yeah.
And now, shoot, he's been on a podium, so I'm going to keep on
Okay.
with this. FIA. So Max completely runs Leclerc off the road. Obvious to everybody. Like I said, it took one safety car, one virtual safety car, like 10, 12 laps. And then now that you got your lead that you need, here's a 5-second penalty.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Did you hear him on the audio do his Lannister impression?
Oh,
and
my
say,
goodness.
Send them my regards.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that gets me to number 2, and that's the FIA handling of Max bullying. He's becoming a bully. Now, I get
not
it.
handling it.
I get it. If Michael Jordan,
Oh, be careful.
you breathe on Michael Jordan, it's a foul. Michael Jordan kicks you in the gourds, not a foul. Michael Jordan earned that. Michael Jordan earned that.
Okay.
Okay. Max Verstappen has also earned some of this, right? But this is kind of different because this bullying shit can get people hurt
Yeah.
real quick.
Yes, it can.
And them allowing him to be aggressive, today him passing cars on pit lane. And it's reckless, it's bullying is all it is. And they're letting it happen. And so we're going to get to my top spot is the FIA. I asked you earlier in the week about a question Sam had for me.
Yeah.
And he asked, he bought F-123.
Okay.
And so he's been playing that, and he discovered they drive in the rain.
Yeah.
And he said, hold up. Remember in Qatar when he couldn't get no water on him, he was burning up, but that would have added weight. That's against the rules, whatever. But they race in the rain. I'm pretty sure it's not much weight, but a raindrop would fall into the cockpit and would add weight. That's not against the rules. You said act of God rule.
Yeah.
They don't mess with a drain cover.
Oh, yeah.
Shooting up from the ground through your race car. How is that not an act of God?
Well, it's not an act of God. It's poor street management is what it is. And I don't know which angle you're taking on this, but I was so pissed, and it's probably the same one I'm taking, but I was so pissed that they not blamed, but they penalized Carlos Sainz for changing out the car parts that were damaged by your road, not your road, but by Vegas's road. And then them saying on top of that, and Farmer and I were like, we were talking about this right before the race. They said, well, the rules in place and we can't, we're not authorized to change it. You make the frickin' rules.
Yes.
Who else is authorized?
Yes. And that gets me to my top
Right?
spot. My top spot is FA and the consistency.
Okay.
There is none. There's no consistency. The drain cover itself, it is their rule that there has to do a full track safety check 24 hours before the race. Well, not in Vegas because we don't. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
But it's in their rule. They have no consistency. So they get all three spots. Let's see if it helps. It helps Stroll.
All right. Well, my back markers, believe it or not, are absolutely completely different from yours. Number 3 for me, and this is going to be controversial. So if I have any Vegas viewers, I probably lost them tonight, but the citizenry of Vegas for throwing what can only be described as the biggest holy tantrum ever of all time about the F1 racing in Vegas. And listen, if I had lived there and if before this race, yeah, I would have been pissed about the traffic. Who wouldn't be pissed about the traffic? I mean, hell, where we live, there's always road construction, so there's always choke points all over the place. But yeah, I would have been pissed off about that. I would have been, if I was a vacationer, I would have been pissed off about having to look at orange screened fencing instead of, beautiful roadway landmarks and whatnot. But at the end of the day, they brought the biggest spectacle on the planet to your city, and they did host it very well.
Mm.
And it was an entertaining race that the world over enjoyed watching. It's not going anywhere. So our only hope is that they do it better next year. And I'm sure they'd be stupid not to. I'm sure somewhere in the FIA or in the F1 headquarters, there's been a week of debriefing meetings. What went well, what didn't, what completely needs to go away, what do we keep, kind of typical business meeting, and then a planning calendar to get us there next year and do better. So, if you live there, you're gonna have to get over it because this thing's gonna be there for a while, and it does help your city. It's bringing in tons of revenue. Second place for me goes to the WRC teams of Ford and, depending on where you're from and how you pronounce it, Hyundai, and Hyundai, as we say over here. You got to come up with something, and you're not the only two manufacturers that has this problem, but y'all getting your asses kicked by Toyota Gazoo. And it's not just in rally, but it's in other sports as well. Y'all got to come up with something, because Toyota Gazoo is, as an organization, is turning into the Max Verstappen of other forms of racing. So, take this off season, get your heads out of the mud and dirt and into the boardroom and figure this shit out. Because we need somebody showing up. Because I can tell you right now, who did show up this weekend, and they're not even part of WRC1. Skoda. And their little WRC2 car, guess what it has that none of your all's cars had? Defrosters. What?
Amazing.
Yeah, little WRC2 car ends up almost whooping y'all's asses by themselves. So let's get that fixed. And number one on my list is the 3-time world champion Dutch douche canoe of Max Verstappen. Is the guy talented? Is the guy talented? Yes. Is he the best driver on the grid? Arguably, yes. Is he focused? Yes. Does he like to lose? Hell no. And what does it turn him into when he is losing? He turns into a whiny little biatch when he starts to even think that he might lose a race. Soon as he lost the lead to Leclerc on lap 16, I mean, immediately within 5 seconds, he called the team and told him his car was shit. Anytime he loses the lead or have had to fight for the lead, all we hear is just, it's whoever can get the call in first, but it's either Russell or Verstappen bitching.
My tires are gone. My tires are gone.
Yeah, man.
Then he gets the lead and drives 30 more laps on them.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, this is lovely. Yes, I'm the best of all time." Blah, go fuck yourself, bro. You drove the guy completely off the road. Now, had he not drove him off the road, would it have been a completely different race? Maybe, maybe not. The Ferrari had already shown to be super fast. Faster than the Red Bull at that track. In fact, the closest the Red Bull could get was fourth. Then we had the Sainz incident, and then the amazing grid penalty that left Verstappen with nobody in front of him. I don't know if you thought about that, but that grid penalty for Sainz, because he was P2 after quali, so he would have been right beside Charles. But you take out Carlos, and now you've got Max back here. So all he needed was a good jump, which he got, and had nothing to block him. So, yeah, the race could have been totally different, but, he drove him off into the paint. That pissed me off. The whole deal with Russell pissed me off because I felt like that one could have went either way, because it looked like he did the same thing. It looked like he drove him to the edge of the track, and then Russell made the screwball move of just turning into him. But I think that penalty started as a Max Verstappen penalty and ended as a George Russell penalty. You got what we saw today with Max leaving the pit lane at Abu Dhabi. Like, he's entitled to go out when he wants to be out. I'm the 3-time world champ, move aside. And that is bullshit, dude. He should be grid penaltied for that. But you know what will happen? If that was
Hamilton
else,
Hamilton was one he was pushing over today.
Yeah, and if it had been anybody else, they would have got a grid penalty. But if he does get one, it'll be a money penalty so that it doesn't affect this race. And it'll be Tuesday or Wednesday next week. He'll get a 65,000 euro penalty or something. They only penalize him stuff that will not cost him the race.
Mm-hmm.
Any other driver on the grid, those penalties will screw them for the whole race. Sainz ran over a manhole cover that absolutely wasn't his fault, replaced a part because it wasn't his fault, and they put him in P12 for the race, ending his chances of winning that race. So Max Verstappen, you're at the top of my. I don't care that you have 3 world championships. It was bullshit. And some of it's not your fault, man. Some of it's because I think the rest of the Formula One thinks you are entitled. And I think they're enabling you. So, and to be fair, you're still just a kid. So, yeah, I'm a little bit pissy about it. And that's really, man.
Hey, we didn't do our predictions. We didn't do our predictions.
We have not. So let's go ahead and do our. Sorry. I'm glad this hat's vented. Oh, by the way, folks, if you see my nice new red fuel pod cap, I got a couple different colors, but provided by 580 Customs tonight. And once I can get some good logo work from them, I'll run it up on the screen so you can see their logo. But they did a great job. He did a great job on these caps. Looking forward to getting the t-shirts next week. But yeah, so thank God it is a fitted hat, so I can let the steam somewhat escape. But yeah, let's do our predictions, man. So I'll go this week since you bit the bullet last week. I'm gonna take. I can't believe I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna take. It's pretty much gonna be what it was this past weekend. I'm gonna take Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, and Lando Norris. And I'm going to say try box that. I don't know if you're familiar with horse racing terms, but I want to try box that and say Verstappen and then Leclerc Norris in either of the 2-3 blocks. And that's my podium.
Mine is exactly the same. Exactly.
Okay. And that's fair. What about the fair podium?
Yeah. What about the points races? The championship races?
I'm going to have to retract that. That would actually be a tri-key, wouldn't it? Tri-box would be any of the 3 in the 3 spots. So, and you know what? I'll stick with that and say all 3 of those guys. Tri-box all 3 of them. But you're doing the tri-key where you've got Verstappen in the key slot.
I'll go straight for Max, Lando, Leclerc.
Okay, there you go. And then let's talk about these other races. Ferrari, Mercedes, who you got?
I've got Ferrari.
Okay, you get to stay
Absolutely.
on the show. All right. Now, so Aston Martin, McLaren, who you got?
McLaren.
Okay. AlphaTauri Williams, who you got?
AlphaTauri.
Okay. Well, then I have the same one you've got because I'm also.
I
love Aston Martin, and I love Alonso.
Yeah, I had specific.
I think Stroll's going to screw Aston Martin.
Yeah, I predict Russell will whinge.
Okay.
I think Lando will be P2 and 4th in drivers.
Okay. Oh,
wow. I predict Piastri P5 and McLaren 4th in constructors.
Okay. Well, I'm taking Sainz for P4. I kind of want to, even though I already made my prediction for the podium, I kind of agree with Will Buxton. He thinks this will be Max's first DNF of the year. So
it would make for a great race.
If wishes were sandwiches, man. So yeah, I'm going to go with that. But yeah, I'm definitely taking Sainz for P4 over Lando. Although I think Sainz Norris is going to be a hell of a fight this weekend because both of them got screwed at Vegas.
Yeah.
And they both wanted to race there, especially after their big time Netflix golfing event. I think they wanted to just roll into Vegas and have a decent race, and they got screwed. So, anywho, but let's move on to some fuel pod news so we can close this thing out in a few minutes. And I just want to get quick opinions. I'll share the first one because the second one was actually yours. But Mick Schumacher has been picked up by Alpine for the World Endurance Championship in 24. Alpine, of course, is going to be brand new back to World Endurance Challenge. It's been a while.
Mhm.
That car is beautiful, by the way, but
Yeah, it is. I really like it.
I don't know about putting Mick. I tear cars up for a living. Schumacher back in there. I don't know how many Haas cars he tore in half, and I don't know if their horse farm had to sell horses to make up for it. But anyway, yeah, he tore a bunch of cars in half. So anywho, yeah, that was my big news statement.
Yeah, I got you one better.
Okay.
Nick DeVries, you remember him?
Yeah, the 47th chromosome.
Yeah.
Wow.
You want to talk about causing some wrecks?
Yeah.
He's joining Toyota Gazoo for the number 7.
Why? What does Toyota see in it? What do they?
I have no idea.
You know what, man? I hope he goes in and does great. I really do. But it's just weird to me that Toyota is the company that picked him up.
I know.
I mean, I'm surprised it wasn't like AMG or somebody. And why take him straight to hypercar?
Yeah, no joke.
Man, I'd put him in like a GT3 car and see what he can do first. All right, the next one, Pato Award of IndyCar fame, if you want to call it that, is leaving IndyCar, and he's joining McLaren F1 as their reserve driver for next year. For 24. I don't know who their current reserve driver was. I never really cared to find out, but I guess that guy lost his job, whoever that was. So, or he went somewhere else, got another seat somewhere. So anyway, that's a pretty big deal. Him leaving the grid on IndyCar is a big deal. That's a big hole to fill because he was always a contender. So
yeah, he drove.
Plus,
FP1.
he's going from driving to barely driving for a year.
Yeah, he drove FP1 in Lando's car.
Yeah. And, well, yeah, him and 58 other rookie drivers that got to drive in FP1. And last but not least, and I think this is a huge stat, if Logan Sargent retains his seat at Williams, it will be the first time in F1 history that the driver grid will not have changed from one year to the next. First time since 1950. Well, ever. So 1950 onwards. So what is that? 73 years?
Yeah. Wow.
This will be the first time that drivers had not changed places. So to me, that's huge. That's a huge stat.
God,
Thank you.
Just a couple of months ago, everything was changing.
Yeah, man. And last year was even crazier.
It's been quite the roller coaster.
So big shout out to Will Buxton, who provided that stat during the weekend warm-up. As soon as I heard that, I went, are you serious right now? But yeah, it's legit. So that's all I had, man. We can close this thing out in under an hour. Enjoy the rest. This is kind of weird doing this on Friday, man. I feel like I got to go to work in the morning.
Yeah, I know.
Except I don't have to, which is nice.
I know. Real quick, hey, F1 Academy news.
Okay.
Aston Martin has their driver is Tina Haasman, and their racing director is Jessica Hawkins, the one that we talked about here that drove the Formula One car.
Oh, okay.
She is their racing director for their F1 Academy team. And driver Tina Haasman, she is coming out of Italian F4, where she won the female championships there.
Okay. Which is great if you're a McLaren fan or an Aston Martin fan. So, yeah, we've got a lot of good. It looks like, Aston Martin and McLaren are also competing on who can be the most diversive in their
they really
progressive in their racing approach. And my hat's off to both teams. Of course, it's not like I hate McLaren, man. I mean, I've said it a million times. We need McLaren in this sport. And I like Zach Brown as opposed to Chad, who would probably drown Zach Brown in that pool right out in front of the McLaren Technology Center. But hopefully he doesn't watch that because he'll be pissed I said that.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe he'll laugh. Who knows? But yeah, I think both of those teams are doing a great job, even though Lawrence Stroll has apparently sold Aston Martin already anyway. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Or even
He's
if they'll be
sold it
called
4
Aston
times
Martin.
this year.
Yeah, I don't even know if they'll be called Aston Martin next year, which will suck, but whatever. Anyway, man, that's all I got. I am JNeil729 at Twitter, and you are 2Diddy4 at Twitter. Check out our podcast here on YouTube. If you're watching it already, then you know where we are. And if you don't, find us and like us, follow us, subscribe us, turn on whatever notifications. Videos we're pretty consistent. It's Thursday nights at 9:00. This week was Thanksgiving, so we moved it to Black Friday.
Tell your
and
friends.
Probably everybody that's probably passed out from Black Friday shopping or getting drugged to Black Friday shopping today. But whenever you watch it this week, hit us up on Twitter or on here. So thank you all very much. You all have a great rest of your holiday weekend.